And it looks like the team on the right, in the recovery vessel to the right, was finishing. You can see there they are pulling the parachutes onto the boat. As I mentioned before, the physical evidence of that reentry phase now evident, visible, well, not right now, but it will be momentarily, that charring on the charring on the exterior of the capsule, on that ablative material, or rather it's a thermal protection system. As the name implies, it helps protect the capsule during that atmospheric reentry. We can now see the recovery vessel Megan spinning and will begin to back into place towards the Dragon capsule. For those of you that have just joined us, the splashdown occurred at 11:04 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:04 Pacific Time, right on time. We heard that the weather conditions in this area were outstanding, and that certainly appears to be the case here, as we can see on screen. We can see the recovery team member on the bottom right, directing traffic, if you will, helping to guide the recovery vessel toward the splashdown site. Now, the structure that we see up and above the I thought we were going to get some comms there, but perhaps not. That lift that we actually see above those two recovery team members, that's a hydraulic lift that once we get closer to Dragon, it will actually push out a little bit and basically hover over.
Dragon, be advised, we are transitioning the forward link. Comm will be unavailable for approximately 5 minutes.
Dragon copy. Comm unavailable, 5 minutes.
Good readback.
As I was saying, that hydraulic lift will tip out over the back end of, or the aft end of the boat, and over the Dragon capsule. The recovery team member that is on the capsule will actually receive the lifting harnesses and cables and attach those. We will then see that team member, one of my favorite parts to watch out for in the recovery process, that individual will just jump right off and into the water, and will climb aboard one of the fast boats in the area. And in a matter of seconds, that hydraulic lift that we see there will lift and position the Dragon capsule up and out of the water and into that nest that we see there in the center of the deck. And that part really is the fastest part of recovery. And then once the Dragon capsule is in that nest then gets pulled forward, basically kind of under where the camera position is now, and toward the ship's deck. And that's where the SpaceX team and the flight surgeon will be standing by ready to open that side hatch after some more safety checks. And that will be a very exciting moment for the Axiom 2 crew. That will be the reopening of that side hatch. Now, keep in mind, it's been closed since they took off from planet Earth 10 days ago. That side hatch has not been opened since before liftoff. So reopening that side hatch will be the first breath of Earth air, which in this case will be very humid and salty smelling, that they will have gotten in the last 10 days.
I love how we're still in their mission. In fact, they went through extensive water rescue training just for this moment. The Axiom crews train on the water rescue, and AX2 is no different. They had some pretty extensive water rescue training, so we're still in the mission.
Yeah, so this is a great view. We can really get a good glimpse of the SpaceX team member that is on board the capsule as it spins a little bit there.
Again, I volunteer for that position. Looks fun to me.
Yeah, it's a really tough position to have. As I said, they train a lot for it. And it's tough because they are in a wetsuit. And when you think about it, they are soaking wet when they try to climb up on top of the Dragon capsule. They climb aboard from after hopping in the ocean. So, yeah, like I said, they're soaking wet. They are, everything's really slippery. And they have to know exactly where they can grab a hold of to safely do their job.
Pretty amazing to think that just 12 hours ago, this crew was in space, was on the International Space Station, and now here they are, bobbing in the ocean. What a journey for AX2.
Absolutely. I mean, you could even say, even as little as an hour ago, they were still in space in microgravity. Yeah, so we see now one of those guidelines have been attached. We can see them kind of orienting the capsule a little bit. This operation is highly choreographed, although it might look like a little bit of a traffic jam here and there, but it is highly rehearsed, and each team member has a specific, exactly what that job is. The recovery team practices both daytime and nighttime recoveries.
Dragon, forward link transition complete.
Dragon copies.
All right, so it sounds like comms with the crew now restored after they were just transitioning some of the communication links or loops that we have. And so I want to point out the individual that the recovery team member that is on the Dragon capsule is actually standing in the bay where those main parachutes have been housed for the entire mission. So that kind of gives you a sense of how large that storage compartment is and how big those parachutes are. Even though they're packed very densely and tightly, all four of them do fit in.
And with those parachutes deployed, we've lost some weight and cargo in that sense, but we're still coming back with 300 pounds of science to process here on Earth, including our crew members and our fifth crew member, Gigi.
Yeah, one of the things that I've loved about this mission was it wasn't just a focus on STEM, it was a focus on STEAM, which for those that might not be familiar is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but with the addition of arts, so STEAM instead of just STEM. And as a musician
Dragon,
myself, I certainly...
Approximately 3 minutes until capsule lift.
Dragon copies. 3 minutes to lift.
Okay, the recovery teams are now preparing to lower the vessel's hydraulic lift mechanism into the water to bring the spacecraft into the on-deck translation system known as the nest, as Kate mentioned. Dragon will remain in the nest during the crew extraction and for the journey back into port. The capsule is currently just about to be lifted up, we think. We'll see it here in a second. It will be centered and then oriented on that nest. Dragon will then be translated into the hangar underneath the helipad aboard the ship so that we can open the hatch. And of course, once open, a SpaceX medical doctor will be the first one in to check on the crew to see if they're ready to egress out of the vehicle.
That's right. We can see that recovery team member still working to secure the harnessing to the capsule, climbing like a highly skilled... Oh. There we go.
Dragon, brace for capsule lift.
Brace for capsule lift.
As I mentioned before, this will happen very quickly. This is one of the most efficient and quickest parts of the recovery process. So don't blink. You can see the fast boat now clearing the way for the lift. That lift now underway. We should now see that hydraulic lift actuate and pull it out of the water. There we go. It's a pretty cool view there of the heat shield on the underside. That's the side of the capsule that was basically facing Earth during re-entry. Those harnesses will now pull the bottom of the capsule, that heat shield, and align it for placement there in the nest. See some water sloshing around the bay where the main parachutes were held. All right, it looks like that has now settled almost into position.
I suppose the last dynamic movement of our cruise journey.
Almost. Once the capsule is placed in the nest will then move forward. It's almost like it grows tiny legs that are invisible and just scampers out of the camera view. But that will be the true last movement of the capsule prior to that side hatch opening. We can see now the recovery team members who you'll note have donned or put on some respiratory equipment. So right now they are plugging.
Dragon, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks and stand by for translation to the Egress platform.
Dragon copies.
So the reason that they're wearing respirators at the moment is that once the Dragon capsule has translated, as we just heard, to the platform on the inner side of the vessel, they will perform some additional hypergolic safety checks to ensure that there are no vapors or fumes remaining. But right now, we're actually just plugging up the thrusters to help ensure that none of those vapors will come out. And that's actually the deck where the Dragon capsule will slide into.
That final translation movement you
Exactly.
were talking about.
Dragon slide. So we can see those recovery team members now unlatching the safety cables and the harnesses that pulled Dragon up and out of the water and helped secure it into the position. Now it's hard to see, but we can still see the windows of the Dragon capsule. They're a little dirty at this point, but those are the two circular shapes on either side of the side hatch. And then we can see up above the side hatch is where those drogue parachutes were located. Also where some of that additional safety harnessing, that rigging is located. So once all of the service section Draco thrusters have been plugged, they are, and you can also kind of see some of it happening now. They're performing some of those hypergolic sniff checks. So the propellant the Dragon uses is different than the propellant that Falcon uses. Dragon's propellant is monomethyl hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide, or MMH and NTO. And when they come into contact with each other, they instantaneously combust. So it's a great propellant for when you're on orbit, because you don't need an ignition source, which is good, because generally you don't want ignition sources in space. So these two propellants are great for on-orbit operations, but they are toxic to breathe. So that's why we were taking these extra steps, because Dragon had a lot of those two propellants on board. And even as recently as an hour ago, some of those Draco thrusters were firing. So just ensuring that none of those fumes are present.
I think we saw a thumbs up from someone doing those hypergolic checks as they were walking away.
For those of you that have just recently tuned in, we had a on-time splashdown at 11:04 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:04 p.m. Pacific Time. The Dragon capsule has been lifted out of the water. They landed near Panama City, Florida, in the Gulf Coast. So it's been lifted out. The astronauts, I'm getting ahead of myself. The Dragon capsule, in just moments from now, will be moved or translated just out of camera view. We have another camera view, and we'll be able to see it there, but it'll be slid into position near the deck where the crew will be able to egress from the side hatch. And then once that side hatch is open, that will be the Axiom 2 crew's first breath of fresh air since they boarded Falcon 9 at the start of their mission back on May 21st, which was just 10 days ago. So we're now standing by for translation of the Dragon capsule, which will put it into position to open the side hatch after undergoing additional hypergolic checks and spacecraft cabin pressurization. So before opening the side hatch, we have to make sure that the environment inside of the spacecraft equalizes or is the same with the outside environment. So we can just barely make out the recovery team making their final preparations before sliding the Dragon capsule into position. Recovery operations are, to me personally, really fascinating, or I should say re-entry and recovery, because it's a lot of, it goes really fast and then it goes really slow. So, all of the steps departing the International Space Station and we can see that the Dragon capsule is now being translated toward the forward end of the vessel's deck. Once again, this is our recovery vessel, Megan, which services our Gulf landing sites. Another camera view there, seeing it move into position. As I mentioned, all the recovery team members wearing those personal respirators to help ensure that if there are any remaining hypergolic fumes, that they don't come into contact with them, as they are right next to the capsule. Beginning to spray down the capsule to try and flush out some of that salt water. All right, we're going to use this ladder to climb towards the top to do some more of those hypergolic checkouts. As I mentioned before, that side hatch is where the Axiom 2 crew will egress from.
Dragon, stand by for side hatch opening and egress.
Dragon, stand by.
All right, we can see the recovery team now taking off their personal protective equipment, or PPE. They can get rid of those respirators as the hypergolic checkouts have cleared. You can really see the the different colors now of the side of Dragon. You know, just a little bit ago it was all white. Now that evidence of reentry. I always love being able to see the heat shield as the Dragon comes up and out of the water. All right, we can see that the recovery team is now opening the side hatch.
There it is.
This is the first breath of fresh air, in this case, salty air, for the Axiom 2 crew since climbing on board Falcon 9 just 10 days ago. So the first person in is the medical officer doing checks with the crew members to ensure that everyone is doing all right. I see some thumbs up and waving.
See some waving from Mariana Barnawi there on the left. The first photos being taken there. I think they're getting the seal of the hatch, but glad to see our crew's already waving for their photo op.
So just out of view, there's that plastic. I shouldn't say it's plastic, but I'm not quite sure what it's made out of, but that fixture will actually help protect the side hatch as the crew egresses. So as I mentioned before, we reuse our Dragon capsules. This is actually the second time that this capsule has been to space. And that fixture helps protect elements of the side hatch from damage as the crew steps out. You know, they are coming back from a little bit of time in space, and we want to assure that everybody stays safe. So we will be partially assisting them out of the capsule, but also just helps to ensure the integrity of the hardware.
All right, first view of our crew. AX2, happy waves and holding hands all around. That's wonderful to see. Nearing 10 days on orbit, and the crew is nearly ready to egress through that side hatch.
You can see the team putting that protective fixture in place, also starting to gather the crew's items. Those are the tablets that they wore around their legs. And we can see the folks on the edge, the left-hand side of your screen, following along with our procedures, documenting what is coming out of the capsule to make sure everything is accounted for. Once again, this fixture that they're putting into place just helps ensure that the side hatch remains protected while the crew is coming out. They used a similar fixture while the crew was ingressing as well. And that looks like one of the footrests or boot rests coming off of one of the crew's seats. It's helpful to remove all four of these just to help get a little extra space inside the capsule. Right, we can see SpaceX recovery members there putting in place the slide that the Axiom 2 crew will utilize to make their way out of the capsule, or egress is exit. since they've spent the last couple of days, last few days, not couple, last 10 days in space. The effects of microgravity, even for that period of time, can be felt. So to ensure their safety, we will help them slide out of the capsule. But I have a feeling that we'll also see big smiles and some happy waves at the same time.
Definitely.
Although I can imagine this moment is somewhat bittersweet because, they are back home, but that also means that they're not in space anymore. This is a feeling that Commander Peggy Whitson has experienced so many times.
Yeah.
I just love that she was able to extend her record. She's now at 674 days in space, which is just incredible. But yeah, this must be a bittersweet moment, knowing you're home, you get to see your family soon, but the ride to space is now over.
I think I heard Peggy in an interview after her NASA retirement say, she was asked, "What are you going to do now?" And she said, "I'd like to go back to space." And she certainly did. I'm sure the families of our AX2 crew are eagerly awaiting this moment to see their loved one pop out of the side hatch. And even more so to have them land in their arms and pass those hugs around, do all those handshakes and high fives.
Mm-hmm. Are now standing by for crew egress, where they will make their way out of their seats and exit the Dragon capsule. As I mentioned before, the side hatch, which we can see now open. The last time this was opened was when the crew had ingressed into the capsule. So it was closed and locked prior to liftoff and has remained there. The crew utilized the forward hatch, which is the hatch out of picture right now. It's located at the top, or the forward end of the capsule. And that is the hatch that is utilized to dock with the International Space Station. So all the trips that they did while on the ISS were through that forward hatch that we are unable to see at the moment, as it's covered up by the nose cone, and just that nose cone out of picture here. Okay, it looks like we might be close to seeing our first crew member.
Yes. Starting to see our first crew member egress from SpaceX Dragon vehicle. Who is that? Is that?
I think that might be Peggy.
That does look like Peggy. Commander Peggy Whitson seems to have egressed the vehicle.
It's pretty impressive that she was able to, she had assistants standing up, but, basically just walked right off. That's really impressive.
I'd say her vestibular system is pretty well trained at this point.
Really set the bar high for everyone else coming after her. I wouldn't want to do that. All right, we got legs of our second crew member.
If they're removing from the center, I'm going to wager that it's our pilot, John Schaffner, but we will see.
Generally speaking, it is easier to have the two crew members in seats 2 and 3. So generally, the commander and the pilot egress first.
Right. And that does look like our pilot, John Schaffner.
So at this point in time, 2 of the 4 Axiom 2 crew members have egressed from the capsule. Standing by for egress of our 2 mission specialists. Now removing the footrests of those 2 other seats. Once again, this helps to make some additional room to move around and climb out. Or rather, slide out, I should say.
And actually, on the right there is Axiom's flight surgeon, our lead AX2 flight surgeon, Michelle Hong, assisting our mission specialist,
That looks like Rayana.
Rayana Barnawi, egressing a Dragon capsule. Little help up.
Yay! Nice little photo opportunity.
A little celebration right there.
Again, super impressive to me that these crew members are just walking off after being helped up. So now with Rayana having exited, all that's left is Ali Al-Karni, our other mission specialist, who was sitting on the far right-hand side.
And our flight surgeon, Michelle Hong, will actually be accompanying our crew all the way back to Houston, keeping an eye on them the whole time. See the feet now of our final crew members starting to egress the hatch, through the hatch. Ali Al-Karni making his egress from Dragon Freedom. Pausing for a little photo there. That's great. Well, this crew looked like all smiles coming out of that capsule.
And now that our crew are safely back home on Earth and getting the first checkouts by our medical team on board, we're going to wrap up our live coverage of their historic return. For those of you that didn't have a chance to follow along, the AX2 crew lifted off from Launch Pad 39A on Sunday, May 21st, and arrived at the International Space Station about 15 and a half hours later, which marked Dragon's fastest launch to docking time for a human spaceflight mission. They spent a total of 10 days in space, 8 days on the ISS before undocking just over 12 hours ago. And more recently, at 8:04 p.m. Pacific time, they splashed down off the coast of Florida at Panama City, just in time to celebrate 3 years of human space flights for SpaceX, marking 3 years since the launch of DM2.
That's so great. And what an incredible journey this has been. Next up, they'll catch a helicopter flight back to shore, where they will transfer to a waiting aircraft ready to take them to Houston. While this concludes the flight portion of the AX2 mission, much of the research portfolios that were performed on station will continue to be reviewed and analyzed. Some of their studies will even continue over the coming days and months. Well, Kate, it has been an absolute pleasure sharing this desk with you, and both for the launch of AX2 back on May 21st and now Splashdown today. So to SpaceX, Thank you for an incredible flight and taking such great care of our crew. And to all of you watching, it's been an honor and a privilege to share the journey of Peggy, John, Ali, and Rayana to space and back again. As we bring this mission to a close, we celebrate how the AX-2 mission is demonstrating that the opportunities presented in microgravity are moving beyond the partners of the ISS to include more countries, institutions, industries, and individuals than ever before. This is how Axiom Space is expanding access to low Earth orbit and building history, as we like to say. Be sure to check out axiomspace.com as we continue to pursue new commercial opportunities for human spaceflight. I'm Duke Brady, here with SpaceX's Kate Tice, and we're signing off now with a final welcome home to the crew of AX-2.
Thanks to you, Duke, as well as everyone else for joining us, and we'll see you soon.